And welcome. So for today's video, we're going to be talking about whether or not rats make cheap pets. My cat is not here. I did just vacuum, so, one of my cats is here. Augie's here. She's not scared of the vacuum. In fact, she follows me when I'm vacuuming and watches me. And, yeah, there's just not even 1 ounce of fear in her. But I don't think she's going to walk in front of the camera for me to do the tail wiggle. So that's unfortunate. Oh, I think Betty's under the bed. Actually, she might be playing with her. But anyway, today, oh, she is under the bed. I see her paw. So today we're going to be talking about whether or not rats make cheap pets. Now, in comparison to a lot of other animals, I could see how they would make cheap pets, because it's like, if you have, for example, a horse, you either have to have a place to keep them stabled or rent a stable at a ranch of some kind, and then their food, their upkeep. Yeah, a horse is going to be more expensive than rats in all likelihood. But does that make rats cheap pets? And in my opinion, not really. Most pets are not cheap pets, the exceptions being like invertebrates. Some reptiles could be considered cheap pets depending on how large of an enclosure they need, how hard their upkeep is, that kind of thing. But mammals in general are not going to be cheap pets. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but like we're specifically talking about rats, so let's just get into it. Starting off, their cages aren't particularly cheap, even if you get them off Facebook Marketplace. The lowest I see, like a Critter Nation, for example, going for is like $50, and it's usually not in the best condition when it goes for that cheap. Even if you get a smaller cage, like there's not very many smaller cages on the market, but like the Preview, for example, is it goes for like $50, and then the Preview Ranch, I've never actually seen on Facebook, but if I did, it'd probably still be like $75. Even the Critter Nation dupe cages tend to be a little bit more expensive on Marketplace. They will also go for about $50 because they're assuming people don't know the difference. They can be cheaper to buy off Amazon depending on the dupe. You do have to keep in mind that a lot of these cages that are cheaper on Amazon is because they have wider bar spacing, which means your rats can escape, which puts them in danger, or it puts you in potential risk of a accidental litter if you have males and females. And a lot of times they're just janky, you know? I see them and it's like already when you get them out of the box, they're just like not sitting quite right. So just be sure, even if you want to go for a cheaper cage, there's nothing wrong with that. But just be sure you're getting one that is still of high quality. They do exist. They are dupes of Critter Nations, but that doesn't necessarily make them a bad cage. But yeah, just be very careful what kind of cages you get. But yeah, the cages alone are going to range from $50 to now the double Critter Nation is $300 and hi baby, $21 on Amazon. They've gone up about $100 since I got my first cage, which is this one. I got this one in 2019, and it cost me, I had a coupon so as well, but it cost me like $200 to get this. But they've gone up about $80 to $100 depending on hi. They've gone up about $80 to $100 depending on like what time of year you get them. And that's probably just going to keep increasing due to, you know, the state of the world. But anyway, whatever. The materials inside the cage are also not cheap because like while the rats themselves can be cheap, which we'll get to in a second, but like you do have to fill their cage with stuff in order to keep them entertained, or they're going to have negative behavior such as skittishness, chewing the bars, trying to escape, even biting. It's like if they get stressed, they're going to react in ways that animals react. And a lot of times people find this behavior undesirable. Just is chasing her tail through the tripod legs. Oftentimes people find this behavior undesirable, which is understandable, but you do have to take proper care of a pet if you want them to behave like the kind of pet you want. So with rats, what you need in their cages, you need ledges, you need ropes, you need climbing apparatuses, you need hammocks. Foraging toys are preferred, though you can just scatter feed. You need water bottles. All these things can range in price. In my opinion, setting up a cage can cost anywhere from $50 to $150 depending on where you're getting your supplies, what kind of supplies, how big the cage is, but it is going to cost quite a bit of money. The hammocks and the water bottles alone can cost up to $50, again, depending on where you're getting the supplies and how much they are going to be. And while you can use scrap material basically around your house in the cages, like if you have cardboard boxes, you can put those in the cages, toilet paper root tubes you can put in the cage. You can make foraging toys out of that kind of material. You can get cheap stuff and DIY it. It's still going to cost you in order to fill the cage, because you cannot fill an entire cage on DIY stuff alone. The bedding itself can be, it ranges again because it depends on what you want to use. Pine shavings and aspen shavings. You can use pine as long as it's kiln drying pine. Those can run pretty cheap, but they can also be more expensive. They're just getting more expensive. A big bag of bedding costs about $20. I personally pay $43 for my bag of Santa chips. If you want to use like hemp or something like that, that's going to cost more. If you want to go bioactive, that's going to cost a lot. And then there's like $15 for a carrier, and yes, you do need a carrier, because if you don't have one and you need one, you're going to be in a world of trouble. So it's best to just get one beforehand. And you can DIY a carrier out of like a bin. People also make bin cages. I don't personally like bin cages. Can they be cheaper? Honestly, not that much cheaper, and they aren't the sturdiest or the most reliable. If a rat can get their teeth into plastic, which they can, even flat plastic, and decide they want to chew their way out, they will, and there's nothing you can do to stop them, because plastic is just not a strong enough material to stop a rat, which is why I do suggest wire cages. As for carriers, though, you can DIY a carrier out of bin, and it works basically the same way. But to be honest, like, a carrier costs $15 and the bin would cost like $10, so you might as well just get a carrier. And a lot of that is startup costs. So it's like, okay, to start up having rats, it's going to be like $200 to like $500, depending on what supplies you get, where you get them, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, well, that's just the startup costs. So what about long term? Are they cheaper long term? And I think, again, it depends on how you view it and what kind of pet you're comparing them to. Are they cheaper than like a cat or a dog? Well, spaying my 2 kittens cost us $500, and we went to a vet that is not associated with like a parent company. They're just an independently owned vet, which makes them cheaper, and it still cost us $500. And that doesn't include things like their wellness exam, their vaccine, their flea treatments, that kind of thing. And you don't have to do that kind of thing with rats. You can just go get a rat. You don't necessarily have to get them spayed or neutered. Sometimes it's necessary, but you don't have to the way you really should with like a cat, or you're going to regret it. They're going to make your life hell. Rats themselves tend to be fairly cheap pets, because like, while you can go to a reputable breeder, and some do charge as much as, I've seen $115 for a single rat. You can also get them from other places. You can rehome them. You can get them from like rescues. My rescues tend to be a little more expensive because they come spayed and neutered. The rescue does have to offset that cost at least a little bit. Come on, baby. No, you're not in the right spot. Come on. My cat's here. And the rescues do need to offset that cost at least a little bit, or they will go out of business. And a lot of times people say things like, I can get a rat from a pet store for $10. Okay, but what about the hidden costs of that? Because the pet store is also going to set you up with improper material. You're going to spend $150 at the pet store. Find out nothing you have is correct. You have 2 tax. Find out nothing you have is correct, and you're going to have to repurchase everything, probably slowly over time, and then you still end up having these 2 rats who could end up being pregnant. They could have behavioral issues that require spaying or neutering. They could have behavioral issues that spaying and neutering doesn't fix. So it's like, there's a lot of hidden costs in getting rats, even if you get the cheap ones, which brings us to the big one, which is the vet. That's the point most people like to go with, is that vets are expensive. And yes, vets are expensive. Are they as expensive for like a rat as a cat or a dog? No. Again, 1 kitten spay cost me $250. The vet I go to for my rat spays, it costs about $150 roughly, but that doesn't include exam fees, medicine, that kind of thing. However, that's my vet. A lot of vets charge a lot more. A lot of vets charge $400 for a surgery or more, and that adds up very, very, very quickly. And you do have to take your rat to the vet. If you love them and you care about them, then you're going to end up having to take them to the vet. The most exam fees are around $65. I've seen them as high as $90. I've seen them as low as $55, but most exam fees are going to be roughly $65. That seems to be the average in my area at the very least. And then medicine's going to cost, even like basic antibiotics like Inro and Doxy. Doxy usually costs about $20. Inro, it depends. A lot of vets like to do individual syringes for Inro, and then they charge per syringe. So like some vets will charge you about $25 for Inro, and some vets will charge you about $75 for Inro if they do the individual syringes, which is horrid. Inro is very cheap to get. They are definitely overcharging, but if that's the only vet in your area, that's the only vet in your area. And then there's things like steroids, for example, a dexamethasone shot or prednisone both cost about $20 to $22, or they did. Prices might have gone up. And these are just basic things. When you add on things like surgery or mite treatments or like weird things that you can't figure out, like Junimo, for example. Junimo has malocclusion and she needs regular teeth trims. And some rats are nice and let the doctors just trim their teeth real quick. Junimo needs sedation because she may be tiny, but she is mighty and she will fight with her every last breath. And the sedation costs $100 and the teeth trim costs $35, which means to get her teeth trimmed, it costs $135. Some rats need it every week. Some rats need it every 2 weeks. Some rats need it every 3 or 4. With Junimo, we usually do about every 3 weeks. And this is something that's going to come up a lot more as I see more and more breeders breeding Marble, which is a variety that has a problem with malocclusion specifically. But with marbles, it can get so bad that even regular teeth trims cannot maintain it. Which brings us to things like euthanasia. Euthanasia has gone up in price quite a bit because these private companies are buying up the vets and they're just cranking up those prices. And the price of euthanasia got cranked up during the pandemic because a lot of people got pets. They couldn't afford to do their medical treatments, and so they would have to put them to sleep. And well, the companies were like, we're losing out on this by not charging more and more and more. So euthanasia usually costs $150 to $250, again, depending on the vet. So that is another cost. So the vet itself is extremely expensive. Even if you remove the vet from the equation, in my opinion, rats are not the cheapest pet. Because even once you set up the cage, that is not the end of it, because they're going to destroy everything in that cage. I've had rats break space pods. I've had them chew their baskets to bits. Hammocks are fair game. These little shelves that, oh, hi babies, I didn't see there. These little ledges I use can break. The bedding is a constant revolving price. Food's constant revolving price. Even with food, like I spend a lot on my food because I do the Shunamite diet, but it's actually not that much more expensive than Oxbow, which is the leading brand in the US for rat food that is pre-made. It's a pelleted food. And Oxbow, when I was getting it, was I think $13 a bag, but I'm pretty sure that price has gone like way up. It's been a few years since I've gotten it, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably $15 to $17 now, maybe more expensive. So like all these recurring costs are things that people don't necessarily think of. They think of the vet, and some people are just like, well, I'm not going to take a rat to the vet, and it's like, well, then your rat's going to die. It's as simple as that. And some people think, well, I'm not going to do surgery for a vet. Same thing, your rat's going to die. And that type of owner is probably not watching this because they don't care about their rats. They don't care if they're cheap pets. Or if they are, they're trying to look for a cheap pet. My suggestion would be to get some kind of invertebrate. Steer clear of fish. Steer clear of anything that actually relies on you to live. I would suggest getting something that needs to be fed once a week and doesn't need very much environmental help to do that. So mammals are not it. If you don't want to be doing a lot of work, spending a lot of money regularly, mammals just are not it. You goofy girl. Rats most certainly are not it, because I have put expensive hammocks in their cage and had them chewed down and chewed to bits within 2 days of me putting them in that cage. And that's just how rats are. So are they cheap pets? In comparison to other mammals, yes. In comparison to what your bank account will feel, not really, because what people think or want when you say cheap is that they're not going to cost them a lot day to day, and rats simply are not that kind of pet. They require a lot of upkeep. Even if you don't have 20 of them, they require a lot of upkeep. That is just how rats are. So, in conclusion, no, rats are not cheap pets. They're fun pets, they're cute pets, but they are not cheap pets. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. All the fun stuff down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!